Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily and a happy Easter to you. I'm Neota Igbe.
Good morning and happy Easter. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. Welcome to the program.
Well, we hope you had a wonderful celebration over the weekend. Happy Easter to you. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, from the nation's commercial capital, we are live. Yes, we can't say that enough. We hope you're having a great Easter celebration. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Talking about being live and direct, the Easter celebration, well, mixed potpourri of different things over the weekend. Some good, some bad. We had the news of about 18 people losing their lives. Very sad story there. But in the midst of all the celebrations and all the things that Easter typifies, sacrifice, love, caring for others, a particular group of people haven't had it so good, for a long time. They internally displaced persons. Our crew visited one of the camps here in Abuja, Kuchingoro area, and had a few minutes with them to see how is it that they were spending their Easter holiday. One of the things that an elderly gentleman who was more or less speaking for the camp had to say says whether we're in our homes or whether we're here, we're just happy that we're alive. We're just happy that we're alive, and we're hoping that someday real soon we'll be able to go back to the lands we know to celebrate this kind of festivities with our families and loved ones. It was really touching, but the other side of it is the people that came to meet them. The first group came and were more or less serving the children. Then another group came and took on the adult and the children. Then at the end of the day, all of them gathered to sing and dance. And it was really, it felt heartwarming. But for me, it's a pointer to the fact that we shouldn't just keep this kind of moments of reaching out to each other, of humanity, these moments of humanity. We shouldn't keep it for festive periods alone. We could take it to an everyday thing. Someone yesterday said, the mother said something to me, said, what if every one of us decides that today, and in every day of my life, I will make sure I make at least one person happier than they were before they saw me? Would that make life a whole lot better?
It certainly will, Nyota. It certainly will. Listening to all of the Christmas messages, where did Christmas come from? Maybe some people can't wait to get to December now. But yes, listening to all of the Easter messages yesterday and listening to the messages over again, one of the things that immediately stands out is the fact that people want the festivities, the essence of our religion, of our faith, because some people have said, I'm not religious, I'm a person of faith. So whether you believe you're a person of religion or you're a person of faith, whatever it is that you profess, is it possible for it to reflect in our everyday lives? Because one of the paradoxes of our existence as Nigerians is the fact that we're so religious. You ask people about whether they're Christians and Muslims, most people identify as either one of these two religions. But then when you look at our daily lives, you have to ask precisely where did the religion go? Why is it not reflecting in the lives that we live? And this cuts across, be you a leader or even the led. And I think it is a question that we need to stop and ask ourselves on a daily basis. If I say I'm a person of faith, of whatever faith it is I profess, especially a faith that preaches love, that preaches sacrifice, how am I exemplifying that on a daily basis as a human being? Indeed. So we need to ask that more and more of ourselves. And I think that when we're able to answer those questions, in public life, in private life, in our families, because the bedrock of any society is the family. And the fact that most families, I don't want to say most, I haven't done a census of that, but families are struggling, families are crumbling. We see children born, without families, they're left to fend for themselves. And then we ask ourselves, how did we come by thugs in society? How did we come by? But the people who realize that, something is failing somewhere, and the people who are serving as inspiration to other people to say, it can be much better. It can be much better. We can do so much more by ourselves. And sometimes these people are not even people of faith. They don't even profess. So I think that people who are people of faith, who say they profess one religion or another, we should not sit by and let people who don't even believe in any God, show us how to move. If we say indeed that, God in our lives is what he is, who has shown us the way, then we need to show that way to others. We need to show that light to others. As you said, there are many stories to celebrate around Easter. One of them was the opening of the Catholic Church, St. Francis Xavier in Owo, Ondo State. And I think it was a moment that really signified for me the essence of Easter, the celebration of Easter, the fact that after death, there is life. That's what Christians believe, that, it doesn't end at death, that, after death, there is a hope for resurrection, which is what the essence of Easter is, that Christ came and destroyed death, and as a result, we have hope that after death there is life. So to see that church come back to life after a long period of mourning for those who lost their lives very tragically in Ondo State was certainly something to celebrate, certainly something to cheer during this Easter season. Of course, you also highlighted the situation in Enugu. So while we celebrate one instance, we also mourn another instance, which we'll highlight again during the paper review, because I also see that there are many more. And we'll have to ask ourselves, what more can we do? People shouldn't lose their lives in tragic circumstances, especially where we can help it. But when we do, it's not the end. People can always look forward that there will be life after death. I beg your pardon, Kayode and Bukola.
Well, Maupe, just before Good Friday, that's the day of the death, the day that we celebrate the death of our Lord Jesus Christ, the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, had given us something to reflect on at that book launch, where he talked about the need for national healing and moral rearmament. Moral rearmament may be the key words here this morning, and perhaps for all time. Moral rearmament, what are we anchoring it on? What truth are we anchoring it on? It may be important for us to anchor it on the truth of Easter, which is the foundation of the Christian faith. It just may be the most important celebration of the Christian faith. Yes, indeed, we celebrate Christmas, and Christmas, by the way, is my favorite time of the year, but Easter is the most important because it is, the death, it's the celebration of the death, burial, and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. So when we're talking about the need for moral rearmament, we should be anchoring it on the truth. And the truth is that, he died that we might be saved. For this reason, the Son of Man was made manifest, so that, he might destroy death. And the death is the sin, the sin of mankind. So whether we're Christians, whether we're Muslims, what is the foundation of our faith on? You talked about something that is very key, which is the paradox of our practical living, whether we're people of faith or we're people of religion. And, the former president may be speaking or is speaking to that man who is in the civil service, who would rather be induced to perform a service for which he has already been paid. He may also be speaking to the man at the filling station or the woman at the filling station who would rather collect an illegal tax before he can sell fuel, or who would hoard the product until later on in the night before he will sell at a higher price. He's speaking to, many other people, transporters, for instance, Okada riders who would regroup, who would come together in solidarity, and lynch somebody else. We see these stories. We remember only with so much pain in our hearts, our brethren in Benue State, people in the internally displaced persons camp, Nakadi, just before Easter. Some were, in fact, going to bury their loved ones, and then they were attacked.
The attack happened.
Time and again, they've been attacked, and Mr. President has condemned these attacks. So if we say that we're people of faith, if we say that we believe in a certain truth, that truth must reflect in our daily lives. And so we must treat others the way we want them to treat us. So when we're rearming morally, what are we anchoring the truth of our moral rearmament on? We should reflect on these things.
Absolutely. And I think we always have these opportunities to reflect. I mean, we have these dates. It's almost like a cycle. Every year, you know that these dates will come. But what do we do with those reflections beyond the celebration, the reflections? What happens the days, months after Easter, after these commemorations, up until the next one? Do we actually reflect and bring those reflections to bear? And what I want us to also pay attention to is anyone can be born. I mean, we celebrate birthdays, but the question is, what are you living for? Is it worth dying for as well? And that's the example we see in Jesus. Anyone can be born, but then not everybody will sacrifice their lives for the well-being of others. And I think that's something we should bring to bear for our nation, Nigeria. Particularly at this time, it's a very tricky period. And, I was looking at the dates. It's quite interesting that we see, Easter, Passover, which is celebrated by the Jews particularly, and Ramadan converging at the same time. This does not happen every time. Well, I think it happened last year, but usually it's meant to be 33 years. I mean, that's how often it should happen. So about, three times in a century, that's how this should happen. But we have a convergence, and I think it speaks to the importance of actually coming together, regardless of where you belong or what party you belong to, what ethnicity you belong to. Let us come together. And I think something we can maybe celebrate is this breaking news we have for you. This is coming from Nasarawa State. The abducted former deputy governor of Nasarawa State, Professor Onjegi Wado, has been released. The State Police Public Relations Officer, Rahman Nansil, confirmed this to Channels Television. Nansil said he was released last night. Talk about an Easter miracle by his abductors after sustained pressure from a search and rescue team. He spent 2 days in captivity. He was abducted on Friday, and I remember we were anticipating some sort of Good Friday miracle, good outcome to this one. It's good that he's been released from his abductors, and we look forward to a similar outcome for a lot of other people who are in one tricky situation or another, security-wise, that we'll get some sort of good news. But that's breaking news for you. The former deputy governor of Nasarawa State, Professor Onjegi Wado, has been released.
Yes, indeed, Kayode. Good news there. As you said, good Easter miracle, hoping that every other person will get to encounter an Easter miracle in this season, especially for our nation, Nigeria. The area of security, that's one area that many will be looking at. There will be a huge miracle happening within this period. But we'll take a moment. I'll come back to look at some of the dailies and what they're saying. And we're starting out this morning with The Guardian. This bold, blaring headline: UK revises foreign health workers recruitment, returns Nigeria to the red list countries. Another Easter miracle?
Well, there needs to be, how do I put it now? There needs to be a reading of that particular story. What does that mean?
True. You have to read it to get it. It's on page 3. But see the riders, and the riders are tied to a bill that is in consideration in the House, in the National Assembly. Outrage over bill mandating 5-year pre-licensing practice for Nigerian-trained doctors. Bill poorly researched, reels out inaccurate figures. FG's brain drain committee work not implemented. Group inactive for months. If bill becomes law, government officials should also stop medical tourism, coming from Professor Tomori. Indeed, you need to read this. Pick up the Guardian to get the details of this revision of the foreign health workers recruitment by the United Kingdom to know why Nigeria has been put back in the red list countries. I do know that within that period of the pandemic, a lot of Nigerian medical personnel got them opportunities outside the shores of this country and all that, including the United Kingdom. So you need to read this to find out exactly what. Come below that. Kuka tasks Nigerians, next government on nation building, with this quote: "For now, the most urgent mission is to start a psychological journey of making Nigerians feel whole again, of creating a large tent of opportunity and hope for us all." That's coming from Bishop Matthew Kuka. It's on page 6 of the Guardian. An interesting one here for the Lagosians and those planning to go to Lagos. How Agbero multiple dues spike transportation costs by 25% in Lagos. That's on page 4. And then
some interesting research.
That story about the passing of the former Attorney General Ajibola, called A Jurist for the Ages, is on page 6. And that's it from the Guardian.
Well, the Abuja Inquirer is the paper I'm looking at for you now, and the lead story there says deadly Easter weekend. Well, those are 2 words that don't go together usually, deadly and Easter, because Easter usually conquers the former. But hey, this is what you see on the front. I think it's referring to the weekend, the fact that we lost quite a number of lives. Look at that. 18 burnt beyond recognition in Enugu highway crash. That is one of the riders there. Many drowned in Bayelsa boat mishap. Fatal crash claims 3 in Abuja. So even here in Abuja, you see that we're losing lives. And all of these are tied to safety. These are not, herdsmen. These are not bandits. These are not kidnappers. These are avoidable situations where safety precautions could have saved lives. Is it in a road accident? Is it in a boat mishap? Is it in a fatal crash claiming 3 lives? There needs to be so much more that we can do as a people to show that we place a premium on lives. Look at this now. 10 months after terror attack, our church reopens. We had that story for you earlier. And they also still have this one. Kuka sets agenda for Tinubu, bids Buhari goodbye. I'm sure Buhari will be happy to say goodbye right back. Page 3 is where you find details. Look at the bottom there. A number of stories there. JAM fixes April 25 for 2023 UTME. So for students who are hoping to write the exams, April 25 is the date you need to set in your calendar. Nigeria's 222 varsities can only admit 2.5% of its population. That's according to NUC. It's on page 10. They have a number of other stories, but let's leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
And flip to Leadership newspaper. Leadership newspaper focuses on, the unpleasant weekend, the killings that we recorded, and this is the way it chooses to render it. Concerns over renewed terror attacks after 2023 polls. Take a look at the riders this morning. Security expert fault presidents matching orders to service chiefs without results. Haven't we had time and again of discussions over this particular issue? Why the president's orders isn't always accompanied by results. Take a look at the second one. They're already writing the handover notes. Surviving IDPs desert camps in Benue State, of course. that doesn't come with much surprise if their camps have now become so porous that they're attacked time and again. Let's go, to the left-hand corner, right beside the big story there. You find this one: Osinbajo, governors can rejoice with Christians at Easter. And there's something right under that one that would interest you, especially political watchers. Journalists, writers launch book on Osinbajo on April 28. That will be interesting. Of course, the highlights of the vice president's, time during this 8 years of the Muhammadu Buhari administration, I believe, is what will be captured in that book. So we'll look forward to seeing that. Talking about what's interesting, but this is what is coming in the next few months. It's above the big story on the front page of Leadership. Senate presidency, Akpabio may drop ambition for ministerial slot. That's a page 7 read, I believe, inside Leadership newspaper this morning. Quite a number of names that have been thrown up, as those who seeking that seat. And there is also a very big conversation on how, it should go to the southeast, because they have missed, the opportunity to produce the president following years and years of agitation. So we'll see how that goes. And of course, just to let you know that it will form part of our conversation this morning on the program. Above the nameplate, avoid cheap talk, fix Nigeria, Kuka tells Tinubu. Indeed, he has set a very huge agenda for the incoming administration. If just in case you're interested in, the bishop's very beautiful letters, just pick up a copy of Leadership newspaper, and you also find it on all other papers this morning. Let's leave it there for Leadership newspapers this morning.
Well, Daily Trust newspaper leads with something that would definitely catch your attention. Auto crashes claim 385 lives in 3 months. Bauchi, Kebbi, Niger lead in casualty figures. 6,000 deaths recorded annually. FRSC blames overspeeding, overloading others. And this is a period, talking about the Easter holiday, where a lot of people will be traveling by road. So please, let's be careful on the roads. Let's just celebrate and not have to mourn during the celebration, all right? So page 4, it will be good to know also what is being done to step up awareness, step up punitive measures for those who are found wanting. You see some drivers facing common traffic, and they do it with so much impunity. And because they did it yesterday, nothing happened. They'll do it tomorrow and keep doing it. So it's important to actually ensure that there's a major clampdown from the right officials who are charged with this responsibility. And just below that, you see clerics must stop desecrating pulpits with partisanship, hate speech. That's, I think, an Easter message coming from the Sultan of Sokoto. Some more details on the inside pages. And this one would definitely interest you. Remember the talk about the $800 million palliative, the facility from the World Bank? Well, there's a front page comment from the Daily Trust saying, "We reject the $800 million World Bank loan for palliatives." So it's a front page comment, as I said. It starts on the front page, continues on the inside pages. I remember doing a breakdown of just how much each Nigerian will get. If this were done, if this were cash transfer, and seeing what that comes down to, and all of the controversy.
$16.
Exactly, all of the controversy around that, and you understand why this is a major conversation. So it's important for a government to speak to this. What is this facility about? How will it be spent? How will you ensure accountability? Because when you hear palliative as a Nigerian, you remember what you saw during COVID, how the palliatives were hoarded. So you wouldn't blame Nigerians for thinking that way. They've seen proof time and again that the management of these things leave much to be desired. Absolutely. Well, let's leave it there for the Daily Trust newspaper. Abuja.
And the New Telegraph is the one I have here with the headline, Tinubu's cabinet, payback time for Northern APC governors. It continues on page 2, 26 and 29. See the writers, overrules in presidential primary, Wike to nominate a minister. Ganduje Wale Edun penciled down for FCT Finance Minister. Ribadu Fayemi Nnamani on ministerial list. Well, these are writers on the front page of the New Telegraph about the cabinet of the incoming president. Kuka, we pray God guides Buhari to retirement as we reclaim Nigeria from unpatriotic persons. That's page 5 and 25. Easter, Nigeria can rise above challenges coming from Khan. And 10 months after attack, our church reopens. We talked about that one. Really interesting. The resurrection. Benue killings, Tom seeks deployment of more troops as death toll reaches 134. Not good news there. Below this picture of the clergy, you have 10th NASS leadership. Akpabio may drop ambition as APC set to zone Senate presidency to Southeast, Speaker to Northwest. Why Greenhorns can't lead NASS by Ogba. Northern aspirants should emulate Sani Musa's ethno-religious consideration, page 2, 5, and 29. This is where you find more details. Above the nameplate, or just below the nameplate, former AGF Bola Ajibola dies. Senate indicts Budget Office for unlawful approval of 19 billion naira to MDAs. You did get more details on that on page 3. An $800 million World Bank facility not solution to fuel subsidy problem. That's coming from Heather. It's on page 26. You get to read that. Then JAM fixes new date for 2023 UTME as rescheduled mock exams hold tomorrow is on page 4. That's it from New Telegraph.
Well, I sincerely hope that, somebody is listening to the opposition to that 800 or the concerns that people have raised about the $800 million World Bank loan for palliatives, and that there will be a sufficient engagement before that money is disbursed by any government. I mean, it certainly shouldn't be disbursed by an outgoing government. It certainly shouldn't be. If it's going to be, if at all, that is what they're thinking of. It certainly shouldn't be the business of an outgoing government to disburse $800 million. It certainly will raise a lot of questions, trust me, Nyota. But let's look at Vanguard newspapers for you and what they have on the front page. Supplementary polls. Opposition parties rally to seize control of NASS. That's the lead story they have there. I2 Guba, 5 senatorial, 31 reps and 57 state assembly seats. Opposition lawmakers elect speak. The details are on page 5 of the paper. They also have a number of other stories at the bottom there. Nigeria's oil production drops 2% to 1.517 million barrels per day. Nigerians frustrated by election outcome. It's on page 9 of the paper. That's according to Bishop Kuka. Benue killings, we risk annihilation, or Tom raises alarm. It's on page 13 of the paper. They have all the stories. In Financial Vanguard, federal government's initiatives on non-oil exports failing. Contribution to gross earnings drops to 10%. NASIMA, CPPE, others list priorities for incoming government. They also have that story, ex-AG of Bola Ajibola dies at 89 as Buhari, Tinubu, Abiodun, others mourn. Or we leave that story, or we leave the Vanguard newspapers for you. But if you flip to the back page, you also see there, Vanguard Sports, the hunter is now the hunted. Adesanya beats Pereira with stunning KO, reclaims his middleweight title belt at UFC 287. Drake pockets £2.2 million after Adesanya's victory. So, the
miracle.
I can only imagine the anger with which he was pummeling his opponent, especially since he was trying to reclaim his belt.
True.
Well, let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
In the spirit of Easter, we hope there will be no pummeling.
Well, it's a sport.
Outside the ring.
Oh, of course.
But that's sports. Let's take a look at Nigerian News Direct this morning. And in the spirit of Easter, the president-elect is speaking. And he says, Nigeria will move faster if we shun ethnic religious sentiments. This is as much as it is for the generality of Nigerians as it is for politicians.
Yeah.
And we hope that those around politicians as well, will do well to hit this, particularly their aides who are on social media, who deploy the use of very, very, derogatory language just to attack political opponents. And we saw this heighten during during the general elections, not just the presidential elections.
And it still lingers.
Yes,
it's still on. We must be honest. It will be good to see these political leaders, as much as they put out statements, across board, literally all of them have said one thing or the other about this. Speak directly to your supporters. In fact, you can mention names. Anybody you've seen that is flouting that, I imagine, the policy which you say that you stand for, naturally should be called out. I don't understand this this culture of protecting your own even when they're clearly in the wrong. I mean, democracy demands that you speak the truth, even if it affects your people. I know they will say, oh, it would reduce the support. I don't want to make these ones now go and support the others if I speak anyhow to them. But the big picture is Nigeria. So if your person is found wanting, by all means speak to them. Please, let us not just put out statements. Let us see you speak directly to your people who have been fanning the embers of division across religious, ethnic,
fault lines.
Exactly. I mean, these naturally shouldn't even be our fault lines. These are meant to be our strengths. Really, the diversity is actually a strength. The fact that you can bring in different ideas and then come up with the best. That is a strength even some other countries had to open up for. The US, for example, had to open up to different cultures. Really, it's a melting pot of cultures, and you've seen how that has helped them. Hey, Bukola, it's Easter Monday, right?
We must first of all see it as our strength. Who is going to proceed by showing that example that will cause Nigerians to see themselves, first of all, as Nigerians before they see themselves as a Hausa man, an Igbo man, or a Yoruba man? Of course, we need that example.
Absolutely.
And politicians must do well, to campaign based on merit in public and in private, Kennedy.
Absolutely. You have to do that. It's two-factor authentication now.
Yeah, two-factor authentication. Okay, we're still with News Direct this morning. Let's go above the nameplate. This one will interest you. It is also in the spirit of Easter. I don't have all of the details, but of course, you should find them on the inside pages. Bill commends patrol team for returning 27 million naira to crash victims' family. This is, Cherry, and of course, is also a worthy example.
Commendable.
Commendable. Whichever patrol team that is, it should be. That conduct should be emulated across board. With that, let's leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct.
Well, that's it with a look at some of the dailies. Easter Monday, there is so much at stake for our nation, Nigeria, politically, socially, economically. We're diving deep into that in just a moment. Stay with us.
Members-elect.
The 10th National Assembly is beginning to take shape as 326 elected members of the House of Representatives and 101 senators have been presented with their certificates of return by the electoral umpire. As the electoral umpire prepares to conduct supplementary elections to fill up the remaining seats in both chambers, it is already clear how politically diverse the 10th Assembly will be. So far, both chambers will be made up of 8 political parties, namely the APC, PDP, LP, APGA, SDP, YPP, NNPP, and the ADC. The APC leads in both chambers with 57 seats in the Senate and 160 in the House. Of the 427 seats declared so far, only 15 are women, 12 in the House of Representatives and 3 in the Senate. These figures are not that different from that of the 9th Assembly, which had 7 female senators and 11 female members of the House.
Thank you, Honorable National Commissioner.
The youngest lawmaker is a member of the House at 27 years, while 70 years is the oldest, shared by 3 senators. Beyond the diversity of the 10th Assembly, the high turnover recorded is unprecedented. 62 out of the 101 senators and 222 out of the 326 members of the House will be making their first appearance in the National Assembly as federal lawmakers. That is, as it stands, 284 out of the 427 elected federal lawmakers are first-timers. Considering the diversity in the 10th National Assembly, which is expected to be inaugurated in June this year, selecting principal officers may turn out to be the most difficult selection process ever faced by any National Assembly in the country's history. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us. We'll continue the conversation. We're looking at the National Assembly, the leadership issues. What are they coming in there to do? Setting an agenda for them. What's the plan? At least over 200 new legislators are coming to the National Assembly for the 10th session. So how would that pan out for them? I mean, if you have over 400, a little over 400 legislators for the National Assembly and over 200 are new, what's the role of experience? How's that going to work out? When you say experience is your best teacher, would that make any difference there? But to help us understand and look at what's going to happen in the 10th National Assembly, we have here in our Abuja studio a legal practitioner, Mr. Victor Giwa. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much. Happy Easter.
And joining us virtually is Honorable Oluwole Oke, who's a member of the House of Representatives representing Obokun Oriade Federal Constituency, Osun State. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Oke.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's start off with you straight away. The 10th Assembly, I mean the 9th Assembly is winding down and the 10th is almost in. What would you say are the plans, seeing that of all the members that are there, over half of those that will be returning in the 10th Assembly are new? What's likely to happen there?
It's a very bad scenario because we've lost some of our very experienced good lawmakers, and I will attribute this to poor party management and of course our level of development. It's a fact that we have to live with now. We have over 220 new members in the House. All the investments of the federal government of Nigerian people on those lawmakers that couldn't come back, has gone down the drain. That is just the truth of the matter. But here we have to live with the fact that, yes, we have 222 lawmakers new coming to the parliament. I want to give it to majority of them that I've interacted with. Some of them are professionals in their making. Some of them are members of the State House of Assembly. Some of them have been in the National Assembly before. I met some of my colleagues that we came in 2003, those who joined us in 2007 and that couldn't come back, those who contested election in 2015, couldn't make it back in 2019. So that is the situation at hand. But by and large, I am sure we will cope with the situation. You still have some old hands in the House who have institutional memory and who will play a great role in mentoring the new lawmakers.
You said you started by saying it's a bad situation, but now you've gone on to say that it's like a mixed breed of those who have been in the State Assembly. Some were there in the National Assembly and couldn't make it back, but they've returned now. But you still say a lot of the investment Nigeria has made in them will be lost. One would think that fresh ideas, new ideas coming will help to speed things up. And seeing that you have new, some political parties that were not there before gaining entrance into the National Assembly, or those who had maybe one or two representatives in the National Assembly now have more than one or two, increasing their numbers as well. One would think that that will give the debate on the floor, whether the green or the red chamber, will give bite to the debate and make it more effective. What do you think?
The beauty of democracy is that given the scenario that we have in our country, we operate a multi-party system. Bonding Nigerians together in one or two parties might not be ideal for democracy. Multi-party system gives citizens options, to realize their ambitions and their potentials politically. But the aspect I'm talking about is about the cost investments of Nigerian people on the old lawmakers that couldn't come back because you may be a professor, a PhD holder, coming to the parliament, it's a different ball game together, because there's need for you to familiarize yourself with the rules of the House, vis-a-vis provisions of our Constitution and various acts of the National Assembly that have been in place. That is the area that I'm thinking that we may be slowing down.
Well, I imagine that, eventually, people will be able to find their way around. This is the situation that we have, and this is the parliament that the Nigerian people have chosen. And I'm guessing that, they'll just have to make the most of it. So talking about making the most of it, Honorable, beg your pardon, Mr. Giwa, let me come to you. A lot of people will be looking at what it is that the Ninth Assembly has done. There will be things that I'm sure a lot of Nigerians might still want the 10th Assembly to look into. Perhaps some of the leaves that were left unturned in the Ninth Assembly. Some people want the 10th Assembly to look at it. But first, they have to cross the hurdle of leadership. The rumor is now rife. We don't know how true this is, and really we don't deal in rumors, but in some instances, you can't just help but look at that scenario. The fact that the number of lawmakers in opposition are way more than the majority of lawmakers in one particular party, whom naturally should pick, selected leadership. But oftentimes, as I said, it's an independent parliament. They can select, it's left for them to pick leaders amongst themselves. And there's now talk that perhaps opposition parties, seeing their numbers in opposition, are looking to, strategize to see if they can also produce a leadership. You think that will work? Can it work?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it can work. One of the things we have been able to, what we have observed in the past, is the fact that when you get to the National Assembly, what is supposed to take center stage is national interest. It's supposed to be the believability of each of the candidates and its purpose and focus. What kind of candidate can provide the said leadership? Yeah, it is assumed that when a political party has majority, they should determine the leadership, but it doesn't play out here in Nigeria and from the past. What we have seen will be a lot of horse trading, a lot of arrangement, permutations. People will start to reach out to other, political parties. They start to, push for the leadership institute, the believability of the candidate, what he can do in terms of just opposing the particular candidate with the agenda, what they think they want to achieve for this country. So it's going to be a very dicey one. Nobody, like has been rightly pointed out, the opposition party, which is the ruling party, which is the APC, cannot really say that they will have, because we have seen, to some large extent, where members of the ruling party have put themselves out to say, oh, want to be the Senate president, you know, and the speaker and all of that. It is not a fiat accompli, because like we have rightly observed too, that the members of the oppositions put together are more than the members, you know, of the ruling party. So there must going to be a serious horse trading. There's going to be serious engagement. People should be appointed based on their capacity, on their capability, and the believability by their own colleagues. And so when you get into the National Assembly, it is a different, you know, political game. The oppositions will want to also push their candidate. And looking at the election that brought out these persons, you will discover that Nigerians, the number of opposition candidates candidates in the National Assembly, or members of the National Assembly right now, because they are now members, is based on the agitations of Nigerians. This is the first time where we've had, like was mentioned by your commentator, that we have some new political party having members, for example, in the National Assembly. For example, in FCT, we are seeing a Labour Party. This is a seat that has been represented by PDP for the past 8, or if I'm not mistaken, more than 8 years. And now you are seeing somebody not from just the usual opposition, but from a Labour Party. So that person will be coming out with the different idea. There is a mindset. There was a reason why that particular member or senator has been elected. So she must now move with the agenda of the basis of which she was appointed. Indeed, and she's going to bring that into the National Assembly.
Do you think that? Indeed, and I think that's what a number of lawmakers will try to do. I mean, she has already started trying to set the agenda for what she wants, what she hopes to achieve, and some of the things that she's hoping to push for in the National Assembly. I think she was speaking recently about, you know, getting a mayor for the federal capital territory, something that will, you know, there'll be big questions as to whether that constitution, because it has to be a constitutional amendment, whether it's something that will even come up at all in the National Assembly. But she started speaking. The question is, for a number of people, do you think that this sort of politics, this sort of, if people decide that, look, we're in the opposition, we're far more than the party, the ruling party, do you think that politics could overshadow whatever agenda? Because you now find people constantly maybe living on edge, you know, watching their backs, etc., etc. Do you think that politics has a tendency to overshadow whatever agenda lawmakers might be bringing to the National Assembly?
Yes, it does, because like I said, that their emergence, their you know, emergence as now members and the senators of the National Assemblies is principally based on what Nigeria wants. Agitation. People wanted the change. People were so dissatisfied with members, people who were there before now. People were not also comfortable with the conventional and established political parties. Even though the two major political parties are platforms within which you can gain political powers and political office. But people were saying, no, we need a change. We need to have people who can think differently. We need to have people who can align themselves with the aspiration of Nigerians. Now, I believe that you raised the point whether they can see muster that will. Now, one of the reasons why they should and they must is because most of them who are now members of the National Assembly, and yes, members of the National Assembly, came into that office based on the yearnings of the people, based on the agitation for a change. Most of them were not pushing by godfathers. Most of them came in because people felt that, look, we need you to be there. You have been able to connect yourself with our aspiration. You have been able to connect yourself with our expectation. And so most of them were elected on that basis.
Yeah, but never mind that, you know, in the National Assembly, there's a ranking system which is used to produce leadership. And we have over in the House of Reps alone, over 222 new members. That's more than half. So a lot of the people who are coming in are first timers. Yes. Can they really be pushing for that sort of, you know, agenda?
Yes, there's nothing new. There's a ranking system, but it is not a law. It is not a law that you must have been in the National Assembly for a particular years for you to achieve that. No. So what you need is just simple permutation and agitation that people should go to political party. But again, before I would like to make this comment, especially making reference to what the Honourable Mr. Oke said, talking about feeling bad about the fact that they have new weeks. With respect, I disagree with him. It is a case of having, so to speak, allow me to say it, having a bad coach who have stayed for so many years, and the owner of the club says, no, we don't want you again. So that you have been at a particular position for so many years, it's not a question of how long you have been there, but what have you been able to do? So if you have been there, that you have been in a position for so long, does not show that you are good, does not show that you have been able to deliver, does not show that you have been able to connect to the people. So when the people feels that, look, I haven't stayed this long, we have not been able to meet our aspirations, you should be sacked. And I think that's what has happened.
There are many reasons why, we always have this high attrition rates in our politics. Some people will say also you cannot rule out the rotational principle you also have in some states, whereby, some people do it's turn by turn, according to some local governments. Every politics is local, but I think Mr. Honorable Kim made his own submissions. Honorable, let me bring this scenario to you. I don't know if it's something that you have also heard, if it's something that you can put some fillip to, but how will it be for members of the 10th Assembly, this agitation or this, this story we're seeing, for instance, on the front page of the Vanguard this morning, opposition parties rally to seize control of NASS. That's the front page of the Vanguard. And before now, it's been on a number of other newspapers. I don't know whether you've seen it as well, and what it is that you are making of it as an old-timer in the National Assembly.
All the political parties before the election, put up their candidates with the hope that they will have the majority of seats and to take over power vis-a-vis governance. But the situation we have at hand is that APC as the ruling party, yes, they have more members elect, but the truth of the matter is that put all other political parties together, they have more members than APC. We will be able to assess the true situation after the supplementary election, slated for the 15th of April. Then after that election, we'll have a very comprehensive position. But the fact remains that, yes, the opposition are coming together, and they're now greater in majority. So anything can happen in the parliament. That's just the truth of the matter.
Mr. Oke, this matter of leadership, so to speak, we know that there was a time when the opposition rallied themselves together and produced a leadership in the National Assembly that is contrary to what the leadership of the ruling party wanted. You don't see that playing out in this case?
Impossible.
I didn't get that.
It is not impossible.
Okay, but how do you think it will work out?
Well, if the minority parties can come together, but let me take you through the formation, the beginning of these political parties. NNPP, led by Dr. Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, stemmed from PDP. Labour Party, the presidential candidate, was a vice presidential candidate in the 2019 presidential election. In other words, both himself and his deputy, Dr. Dati Ahmed, were members of PDP before they left the party. So the point I'm trying to make is this: it is very easy for these three political parties to come together. And if you put the numbers together, all they need is to put in SDP. I've looked at the members of SDP from Nasarawa, Honorable Gaza, and his other colleague, Honorable Dairu. They are members in the past. So if you bring them together, the fact remains that we have the same ideology. We've come together, over a long period of time. So it is very easy for them to come together and they will have more numbers than the ruling party. And like I've said, it's a game of power. Everybody struggle. You know, nobody serve you power freely on the table. You snatch it. So anything is possible. That is just the truth of the matter.
What agenda do you think that will be set in for the 10th National Assembly? I mean, as a member of the 9th National Assembly and also looking forward to being inaugurated as a member of the 10th Assembly, are there things that you think that are a matter of priority for the 10th Assembly to immediately pick up?
Yes, national security, economy, power generation. These are the issues that really affect Nigerians. Nigerians can no longer go to bed with their two eyes closed. Economy, we've seen policy somersaults. Healthcare, education. We've seen our students being locked out of the universities for months over simple matters that can be sit down and discussed and ironed out. You see, these are all the issues that we are suffering from, and there will be issues that we in the 10th Assembly will be focusing on.
Okay, let us hope that indeed that this agenda, but what precisely do you think that lawmakers can do about this? Is it a question of laws? I mean, because when you talk about, for instance, education, universities being shut down as a result of ASU strike or a result of government not meeting its own end of a bargain, thereby forcing lecturers to go on strike. What precisely do you think lawmakers can do about that? Is it something that laws can solve?
Globally, the legislature is a symbol of democracy. And I expect that in the 10th Assembly, we will be looking at a process of, sharpening executive policies that they may evolve or bring to the parliament based on international best practices, experiences, and then sharpen their policies and then look at our laws and see if there's need for us to amend our existing laws, enact new ones, or repeal where the laws have become obsolete and unworkable. I think this is what we'll be doing in the 10th Assembly.
Mr. Giwa, let me come to you. I'm wondering whether you also see a room for, some people have also said that part of the frustrations a lot of people have, currently feel as a result of the elections which we've just finished, we've just conducted, and it has left many people feeling more frustrated than elated. And I'm wondering whether you think that this is a question of laws. Do you think that perhaps there might be need to look at the Electoral Act once more? Or do you think that this is now about us as a people?
Well, you see, we have never had a problem with our laws. Like Justice Oputa said in one of his rulings, the problem with Nigeria has never been our laws. Our problem has been the operators of our laws. Our problem has always been ourselves. Lack of political will, excessive corruption, abuse of office, lack of check, impunity. These are the major issues affecting Nigeria. Our problem, I think, should be too many laws. You don't need plenty of laws to govern a country. So in Nigeria, we have done amendment, representation. I mean, look at the Electoral Act that was just passed, Electoral Act 2022. Here we are. Simple express provision of the law. It is even sad that those provisions of the Electoral Act that were pushed, presented by INEC themselves, they find it difficult to apply that law expressly, not something that can be inferred. I'm talking about, if you want me to be specific, the section that says that they have within 7 days under section is it 54 now or so, if I'm not mistaken, that says, look, when the election is declared, you have within 7 days to review it. It is a new introduction to the electoral, process. Not one, with all this hullabaloo coming from the electoral process, no one, not a coalition officer, not a returning officer, has tried to even invoke that section. I was at the coalition center when those agitations were coming. So what I'm now saying is that it is not an issue of law. It is the political will. Nigerians, I really don't know. Like I said in some fora that sometimes before people get office, they think for themselves. But when they get into office, they seem to have people to think for them. So that is why maybe, when they get to offices, they start looking for people to think for them. And that is the cul-de-sac we have found ourselves. So our major problem has never been the law. Our major problem has been those things I've mentioned: lack of political will, corruption, abuse of office, and impunity.
Okay, at this point, we'll take a break. We'll be back in a moment. I'm sure that our colleagues in Lagos will be, firing their questions when we return from this break. Please stay with us.
If the party says that the Senate president should come from a particular zone, we have to look at it and see whether it is fair. The Senate president is not supposed to be a regional president. It's a Senate president of the Nigerian Senate in the United States, and that is the democracy we are trying to copy, and that is not what we are actually fully practicing. I see people coming to the National Assembly with nothing. And then suddenly, because they spend years in the National Assembly, they become rich. Something is wrong. You see civil servants living in houses of billions. Nobody asks questions. I've been saying that there should be Unexplained Wealth Act, so that if you display wealth that is not in tandem with their income, you should be investigated and it should be confiscated, and if it is extensive, you should be prosecuted. People should ask questions. Now you see what is happening. They are trying to buy the position. The position in the leadership of this country is becoming those that belong to kleptocrats and plutocrats. That's what I'm saying. Democracy is no longer there.
So they're already planning to buy this position?
They are buying it already. Didn't you hear the accusation that they are sharing money? Some people think that the more they have, and I was even thinking, even in the last election, if I had more money, I would have won. Yeah, I think Nigeria should put more pressure on us, the senators, and demand for what we are elected to be. We should put Nigeria first and Nigerians' interests first in even determining this so-called leadership that you are talking about. Because as for Senate, you are just a presiding officer. It's supposed to be one among equals, not first among equals. The problem now is we always put a Senate president and say he is first among equal. The rest will now be, distant to his gavel that you give him. He hits it up anytime. But he's supposed to be one among equals.
Welcome back. Let's continue our conversation on the incoming 10th Assembly. Not forgetting that we still have a 9th Assembly, which has, some few months to go. We still have with us Honorable Wale Oke, who joins us virtually. Is a House member representing Obokun-Oreade Federal Constituency in Osun State. And from our Abuja studio, Mr. Victor Giwa, who's a legal practitioner. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with us this Easter Monday. Honorable, let me come to you now. You're a fifth-time member of the House. For some, that is even a record in itself. And I wonder, yes, the talk about the leadership is on. We'll get to that in a moment and continue that conversation. But just how much faith do you think Nigerians have in the 9th Assembly, then moving on to the 10th Assembly, such that they would support you, take you serious? How much of performance did you show in this 9th Assembly to warrant another 4 years of trust from Nigerians. First, a lot of the members of the National Assembly are not returning. Yes, a lot of things happened during the primaries, but for some, that's even expression of no confidence in those members and at large the performance of the 9th National Assembly. So from where you sit, the experience in the 9th Assembly, do you think Nigerians still have faith in the National Assembly?
I believe Nigerians do. But one reality we need to actually face is the fact that the 9th Assembly did not actually enjoy the four years term that they ought to. We never bargained or planned for COVID-19 pandemic, but it came and it took almost 2 years off the 4 years time that we ought to have and enjoyed in the 9th Assembly. And it affected virtually every facet of our lives. And this is one fact that we all have to embrace and live with, you know. So I believe that Nigerians have faith in the 9th Assembly and going forward, the 10th Assembly. Most of our colleagues that couldn't come back, not that they didn't perform or do well, like I observed earlier, that most members couldn't come back owing to party management, administration, local settings, rotation between one local government or the other. But you will agree with me that when you return your members, the society, the constituency is more likely to benefit more. So going further, I can assure you that Nigerians, have faith in the 9th Assembly. We try our best under the leadership of Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila, who has brought a lot of experience on board in the administration, the management of the 9th Assembly. More bills, more laws were made. Part of it is this electoral act, that we put in place to ensure that Nigerians truly and indeed elect their leaders, except for the fact that some other factors, militated against what the electoral act sets to achieve. But I can assure you that Nigerians have faith in the 9th Assembly vis-a-vis the upcoming 10th Assembly. They've made their choices, they've elected their members, and we just have to, move on.
It's interesting the point you made. Let's talk about this, the build-up now. The point you made about so far the minority parties, now the opposition parties are more when you sum them up in the House of Representatives, 162 for the APC, and all other parties 163, at least the figures that the INEC chairman spoke about. So just one ahead. We'll wait for the supplementary elections, naturally, to see how that plays out. But we've seen the movements now. You believe that some of these parties have their roots in the PDP, but don't forget that the deputy speaker had a meeting with the governor in your party, Governor Wike, and Governor Wike was said he will support the leadership of the party at the national level, and he described Honorable Wase, as someone who is experienced, that the House does not need a greenhorn. So to that extent, it looks like your party has a lot of challenges, even in-house. So how well would you be able to marshal in-house and then by extension other opposition parties to maybe rally round and have a say in this leadership emergence process?
You see, politics is very dynamic in nature. Yes, I agree that our deputy speaker visited our leader, Governor Wike, and they had that banter and exchange. The fact remains that some other aspirants may also visit Governor Wike, and then you probably have to listen to what he has to say. in PDP, I will admit that we have our issues, but in Yoruba land, in my culture, is when two elders have their issues, the younger ones, are taught not to dabble into it, because when they resolve their issues, you may not be there. I'm sure we'll get over all our problems, we'll resolve our problems, and I can assure you the journey for 2027 election has started. And like I observed earlier, that these three other political parties, two other political parties, NMPP and Labour Party, stem from the PDP. And I can assure you there's likelihood that we'll come together if truly we want to take power in 2027. So it's a very dynamic situation. And as we progress, you see what will happen. That some of us may have learned our lessons and we have seen the reason to all to come together and bond together properly to be able to take over power.
Well, Honorable, the elder and children analogy, I don't know if you're describing yourself or people in the National Assembly as the children in this case, because clearly looking at the age, some of you are even older than some of the governors and all of that, but perhaps I'm stretching that analogy too far. But let me go to Mr. Giwa in our Abuja studio and get his thoughts on this. So what we saw playing out in the presidential election, the G5 governors, for example, in the PDP, the kind of work they did and how we saw the elections come out, the Labour Party factor as well, which we saw play out a lot during the presidential election. Are we likely to see that play out in the emergence of leaders for the 10th Assembly as well? I just referred to that meeting the Deputy Speaker of the APC had with Governor Wike of the PDP, where he said he was going to support the leadership of the party at the national level.
Yes, thank you. It's going to play out. There will be a lot of permutation. There will be a lot of engagement. There will be a lot of consultation. There will be a lot of horse trading. There will be a lot of discussions, engagement with other political parties. Like the Honorable said, there are some political parties that have some common grounds. Most of the members elect and senator-elect that are from other political party carpeted because of the disenchantment with certain issues within their former political party. For example, like he made reference to the case of Nasarawa State, the SDP, most of them came from the PDP and other political parties. In some states too, we saw people who won in elections under the Labour Party. They actually came out from PDP. So, but you will see a lot of engagement. You will see a lot of horse trading. You will see a lot of consultation. You will see some cost carpeting. People moving from people being a member of a political party, but are moving and pushing the agenda of other political party. They will just retain their position as a member of the party that brought them in, but actually they will be doing the agenda of other political parties. So it is allowed, it is horse trading, it try to argue their members, they try to connect. So it is likely going to, we are likely going to see that playing out, people having contact, a connection with their other, former political party or their affiliate political party, if I can use that word. You will see the issue of horse trading. You will see promises. You will see, Nigeria political parties, especially in National Assembly. You will hear cases of, being a chairman of a juicy committee. When I win, when you vote me, I will make you a chairman of this juicy committee, and all of that. So you will see that playing around, not mostly for for the interests of the country, but some of them will be mostly for their personal aggrandizement. Yes, you will see such consultation.
Mr. Giwa, let's now look at those consultations vis-a-vis, the zoning agitation. And we find that in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, when you touch on the Senate, you hear names like Honorable Undume, whom we just heard earlier on. You hear names like Senator Osita Izuna, so you hear names also like, Senator Ojus or Kalu. And at the Senate, the agitation is that it should go to the number 3 position should go to the Southeast. And in the House of Representatives, you hear names like Honorable Yusuf Gagdi, you hear especially the Deputy Speaker, Idris Wase. So when the agitation for Southeast, the Senate presidency should be zoned to the Southeast, clashes with merit, which should take precedence, and how should the party manage it? So when you talk of ranking, for instance, Honorable Ndume, who is also in the race, is also interested in the race. At the House of Representatives as well, other zones are interested. Honorable Peter Akpatasin is also a ranking House of Reps member. Yusuf Gagdi is also a ranking House of Reps member. So when merit clashes with, that ranking rule at both houses, which should take precedence, and how should the party manage it?
Good question. I think in making the analysis or analogy of these issues, consideration needs to be given to the circumstance. One, the tempo or the status of the nation, the feeling of the nation, the unity of the country, the agitation of the people, the need to have a united Nigeria, the need to appeal to certain persons and certain groups, the need to address the dissatisfaction in the system. And so what do I mean? When issues of states, region, conflicts with merit, the proper thing to actually look at is to look at the merit, because Nigerians and Nigeria have suffered as a result of political compensation. What I mean by political compensation, we have seen a system where people are made to occupy certain office or offices based on the region they belong to. Now, looking at the region they belong to, the question you will ask is, what have they been able to bring to the table? Have they been able to address national issues? Have they been able to solve the fundamentals? Because Nigerian problem has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with tribes. It has nothing to do with, and I will say what I mean. Poverty in the Northeast, poverty in Borno State does not take the toga of being a Christian. People in Borno State, the richest people in Borno State and that in Enugu State, you cannot bring each of them and say, oh, you are poor because you are a Muslim. Or the guy in Enugu State, the poorest of the poor in Enugu State, is poor because he's a Christian. He's not poor because he's from the Southeast. He's not poor because he's an Igbo man. The man that sells, the ladies that sell tomatoes in Lagos, in Ajegule, that have about 5 of his siblings sleeping in one room. They are not there because they are from the South. They are not in that issue. Out of school children in the North, it's not happening because they are Muslims. It's not happening because they are from the Northeast. The same problem in the North is happening in the South. It's in the West. It's in the East. So what I am saying, therefore, that in exercising whether you are coming from a particular region, emphasis should be to what can you do from the country? What is your alienation? What directs your actions? What do you put into consideration when you are taking the activities of your state? What is your precedent? You don't make somebody a leader whose precedent and history has been questionable. If you want a particular candidate from the Southeast or from the Northeast, the question we must ask ourselves as a political party, because your question is, what will the political party do? Is what are they bringing to the table? What is this person's history? What did he do in the past? What can he do now? What is his understanding about the peculiar problem in Nigeria? If Nigeria as a country is like an hospital, we be in the emergency unit. Nigeria needs a country that can a united country. Nigeria needs people who can give us a sense of direction. Nigeria needs people who can connect to them. Nigeria does not need people who have a landlord mentality. People who believe that, yes, because I belong to a political party, I'm entitled to this position.
It would seem
so we must not have people with a...
It will seem a tough nut to crack, and it will get members of the National Assembly as agitated as you are speaking right now. And I imagine, Honorable Oke, that you'll also be interested in contributing to this part of the conversation, being a member-elect yourself. And while you're doing that, if you're interested, I'll also like you to speak to this. The president-elect has met with members of the National Assembly, and one of the very important things that he said was that he has no preferred candidate for the leadership positions of the National Assembly. I wonder if the National Assembly members and indeed Nigerians should be taking that as face value, considering how important the work of the leadership of the National Assembly is, to the success of the executive. And we've seen, testy times for the relationship between both arms of government in the past. We can cite the Electoral Act 2022, for instance, from this outgoing dispensation. And you can also tie that with the meeting that one of the aspirants of the speakership position had with the governor of Rivers State, who, of course, sort of endorsed him. So should we be taking such, subtle approvals at face value, particularly the position of the president-elect, when he says that he has no preferred candidate?
I think the emphasis should be on programs, policies, national interest, and not about where one person or the other comes from. However, we admit that Parliament across the globe runs on certain principles, conventions and practices, and of course, laws. Ranking is one of the major principle that the Parliament operates on. In a more advanced nations like in the US, the speaker by default may have emerged, and that would have been Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila, because he's the incumbent speaker. His party has more members, but not absolute more members. Like Barrister Giwa observed, there can be negotiation or trade and all that to get the required numbers of members to get re-elected. But like I have said, I will prefer a situation where we look at programs and policies that will benefit Nigerians generally. From my experience in the Parliament, I've seen speaker being zoned to one zone or the other, and you can ask those zones what they have benefited from such exercise. But what is important will have been programs that Nigerians will benefit from, irrespective of where they come from, rather than talking about sacrificing merit on the altar of zones. At the end of the day, you don't get anything out of it. Just like you observed, maybe compensating people personally with their personal gains and all that. But when it comes to society benefiting from a government, I think it is better to put people to consider competence, capacity, experience, and people who can deliver the job. And when you put in place good programs that Nigerians benefit from, let me give you an example. Look at the social investment program of President Muhammadu Buhari. It's a very fine, beautiful program that Nigerians would have benefited from, but it was not implemented properly. There was no law, there was no rule of engagement, there was no law guiding it. It's one of the best. It's one of the best programs that the government actually brought on board, where Nigerians, the poor people, the underprivileged Nigerians will benefit from. But look at implementation; it was not properly handled. There was no rules of engagement. So policies and programs of government is what we should focus on, and who can deliver the job, rather than looking at where Mr. ABC comes from. The president-elect, like you observed, look at him. It's not that as if a majority of his party leaders wanted him to be their candidate, but he fought his battle, and he has the competence, he has the experience, and then he won the primary. And then, of course, the election itself is before the court, so I don't want to talk much about it. I don't think zoning was the basis of his election. Even our party as well. I don't think it's also zoning. I don't think zoning was the basis of election. And it was more of who was able to manage the situation to emerge as the candidate of the party. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, I want us to consider ranking, experience, capacity, rather than talking about zoning. And I don't think zoning will work under the current dispensation.
Okay, Honorable, staying with you, since you talked about this matter of laws, and I do remember that Mr. Giwa said Nigeria's never had issues, and he's a lawyer, so he should know. He said Nigeria's never had issues with laws, but it's about the implementation of these laws, and I mean the enforcement and indeed implementation of these laws. You talked about laws to guard or to guide the implementation of certain policies of government. I do know that in the Constitution it says that the number one assignment of the government is the safety and welfare of its citizens. Now, if that is already there in the Constitution, do we need more laws? Does the 10th Assembly need to come in and do more laws to ensure that, like the policy you talked about, the social welfare policy of the government, which you say, in your words, was not properly or was not effectively carried out as it should? Do we need more laws?
A dynamic society, when in 1999, when our constitution, the Grand Norm, was signed into law, there were developments, and if you look at that time till now, there have been changes in society. And so when you have new development in society, and we're also a member of the global community, so there might be need for us to think with our laws to make sure that we operate in tandem with best international practice that has evolved. So you cannot really close our gates to lawmaking. Of course, the purpose of having a parliament in place is to also make laws. So if you are saying that we shouldn't make laws because we have some laws on ground, then it means we have no reason to put in place
But real quick, shouldn't the legislature be thinking of how to ensure that the laws made as they are followed through and implemented? Shouldn't that be what the legislature is looking at instead of tinkering and making more laws?
Yes. In the House, we have a committee called Legislative Compliance in both chambers. Their mandate is to ensure that our laws are complied with. So, but that notwithstanding, my position is that if there is need for us to make laws, subsidiary legislation, for us to adhere to ensure that the laws that we had in place are complied with, we shouldn't close our eyes to it.
Okay, let's get Mr. Giwa's closing thoughts here. Mr. Giwa, your closing thoughts.
Well, I just feel that in terms about the agenda for the National Assembly, the National Assembly had issue of stabilizing the legislative activities and fostering national development. What should be the agenda for the 10th National Assembly is the unity of the country, security, reduction of poverty, raising the youth, reducing or curbing the youth unemployment level, unification of the country, and ensuring that when Nigerians are given what they deserve, the issue of where you come from, the religion you belong, will not be an issue. The National Assembly should set an agenda that will bring into unification of this country and national development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Victor Giwa is a legal practitioner, and he joined us here in our Abuja studio. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
And he joined us virtually, Honorable Oluwole Oke, who is a member of the House of Representatives, also re-elected to go into the 10th Assembly. Congratulations again. And thank you for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you.
Sunrise will be back. Sunrise Daily, rather, will be back in a moment. Please don't go away.
Indeed, it is Easter, particularly Easter Monday, the day after resurrection. Christians all over the world celebrate this day, commemorate this day, which marks the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Lots of lessons to be learned in this one. And as you can see, we've been joined right here in our Lagos studio by Venerable Adeyemi Agbelusi, who is a clergy and also an accredited mediator and arbitrator. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily.
Good morning.
And happy Easter Monday to you, let me add.
Happy Easter.
You know, festivals like this are not just for the festivity sakes alone, not just for whining and dining, a public holiday. There's always a significance, a message behind all of that. And this is coming at a time where Passover, Easter, and even Ramadan are coming literally at the same time. So for Easter, for millions of Christians around the world, what is the lesson? What is the significance that we should bear in mind while we're tearing apart the turkeys and the chickens and what have you?
All right, thank you very much. I perfectly agree with you that the celebration and the chicken could be a distraction, but Easter, again, is just another ritual of the church, another celebration. And it's a lot like a piano and music. So if you play the piano and there's no music, then it's pointless. And if you listen to music but you don't understand the piano, there's also a disjoint. So yes, it's important to know the reason for this season. Now, I always like to situate it in the fact that the church has a calendar. I always emphasize that.
Yeah.
So Easter doesn't stand in isolation. So we started from Advent till the Christmas. Then we moved down to the baptism of Christ, Epiphany. And then we came into a period when we were going to have mass baptisms and renewal of faith, which was done yesterday. So that was done at Easter, and we had the Lent preceding that. And at the end of Lent, we went into the Holy Week, which is what you're talking about, the overlap with Judaism, and I'll come back to that. And then we come into the Easter, then Easter Monday, then we go to the Ascension, then Pentecost, and then we enter into the harvest or Trinity season. So in reality, the Easter and the Passover are almost identical. And for the last 2 years, they've overlapped, Ramadan, Easter, and Passover. And the significance of it really is very easy to say it's about freedom. Because on Palm Sunday, the Jews will go to the temple, historically, to select a lamb that they will offer for Pesach, for Passover. And that was when Christ entered into Jerusalem. Now, when they also are examining those lambs, Christ also examined it was being examined by the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Then when they were cleaning their houses, preparation for the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, which we call Monday, Thursday, Christ was cleaning the temple. Then on Monday, Thursday, they celebrated the Passover, or the Pesach. So they had the matzah and they had the mayim, which is the bread and the wine. Christ also instituted the Holy Communion.
Yeah.
Then they entered into the Good Friday, which was really now when they slaughtered those lambs. And as those lambs were being taken all over Jerusalem, it was like snow taken to be slaughtered. Christ was taken to the cross. And then they entered into the high Sabbath of Saturday when they all rested. And then on Sunday, which was yesterday, they celebrate Bakurim, which is the feast of the first fruits. And we also celebrate the Easter, Christ being the first fruit of a new creation in Adam. So there's a context to everything. So the Passover for the Jews represents freedom from Egypt, marking the Exodus, which is really a deliverance. And so Christians also mark it as a deliverance from sin and death, not only physically, but mentally, emotionally. And that's what we should find in this. So what was Egypt to the Jews? It was not really a bondage. It was a system that degraded them. They were in hard labor. They had to rely on people for their food and their existence and how they lived. And so coming out of Egypt, God said, let my people go that they may serve me. They may be human. And so their freedom from Egypt was not just about free, it was about freedom. God would have probably just struck Pharaoh dead and just use one big plague and release them. But no, it was a process to take them out and then make them to the Jewish nation. So the Christian celebrates also a deliverance from depression, losing hope, being stagnated, and seeing that through the pathway of suffering, one can emerge as a better, renewed person. There can always be rebirth. No matter how things are totally destroyed, there could always be rebirth. I was happy that the church in Owo that was destroyed about 10 months ago was opened yesterday. That was very significant for me because it shows that the church again rises from the ashes of that death.
You know, this is a cycle. As you said, the church has a calendar. I mean, others have their calendars, and it's literally a cycle. Every year we have these festivals, commemorations. The Passover, for example, started way before Christ. The commemoration had started. He participated in it, as you said, and it was symbolic. Even he himself going to the cross, symbolic of the Passover, the lamb and all of that. And then Easter, after Christ, has been commemorated thousands of years. But these challenges still persist. Hopelessness. I even think that right now, coming off COVID-19, and then for a lot of people, the elections in Nigeria, they probably can relate more with hopelessness now than ever before. So these challenges, looks like they're not going away. So how do we still find significance, power in these festivals amidst the myriad of challenges that seem to be growing by the day?
Beautiful. Awesome question. Now, Christ says to us, shortly after their Easter and his ascension, he says, in the world you will have trial and tribulation, but be of good cheer, or be happy, because I've overcome the world. So I don't think suffering will ever end. With the global forces of change, economic disruption, technological disruption, globalization, currency, and realignments, the world will never get better, to get darker. But you as an individual will always have to resolve to be of good cheer. Nobody has the right to make you unhappy without your permission. So the message of Easter is that you need to be able to look at the Good Fridays of your life, which have been many of them: a failed marriage, loss of a child, loss of a business, dashed hope at elections, all kinds of things, but still say to yourself, something better is possible. A better future lies ahead. The looking forward to the salvation and the comfort that God brings. And it's significant that the next feast after Easter, which is the Sukkot, we come after the 50 days from now, is really about God sending us what? The Comforter, to be with us and to keep us in the difficulties and the hopelessness which you just alluded to.
Relatedly, if you look at the cross, the message from the cross, they're timeless messages, messages of love, messages of sacrifice that, Christ represents for us, message of forgiveness. At the cross he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, those who canvass for his crucifixion on the cross. And these are the things, that Christians stand for. These are the virtues that they profess. This was the starting point of our conversation this morning on the program. So it's a paradox, when we go out into the world and you find that a lot of Christians who go to the church every other Sunday, every other midweek day to profess these virtues do not practicalize them when the true test comes. So how do you explain this paradox?
Okay, well, the Bible says that we hold this treasure, this news of salvation, in earthly vessels, or unclean vessels. that the excellence may be of God. So in reality, yes, there's always a disconnect between religious people and spiritual people, or people who profess religion and those who actually practice it. That has always been. In fact, it was religious people who crucified Christ. I always find it significant when you're reading the Easter story that they took Christ to the house of Pilate and they had set him up that, look, ask for Barabbas and make sure he's crucified. But the reason they didn't enter Pilate's house was because they didn't want to be defiled so they could celebrate the Passover. Oh. That always, I found really so amazing. So you're going to take a man's life, you're setting him up to be murdered, but you don't want to enter into the house of the Gentile so that you are not defiled. So you always have this paradox of, people who are just cloaking or masking as Christians or whatever faith, but don't practice it. But again, it comes back to individual choice and decisions as to what moral values, what ethics you want to live by.
Are you saying those who are hypocritical in the profession of their faith are the religious ones?
Oh, yeah. Those I mentioned that.
Who stand for what they believe?
Yes, in Jerusalem this week. I was in Jerusalem 3 years ago, and I was amazed that on Wednesday I couldn't get out of any of my friends. I was at Hebrew University, and I was, what are you guys doing? So we're cleaning our houses. So why? So tomorrow is Passover. So they have to clean their house, literally, as in deep clean, and then they preparing for the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, removing every dust and every yeast. I mean, meticulous cleaning. So for the Christian, we don't clean our houses. We're supposed to clean our hearts. So at Easter, in the Anglican Church, we have what they call the Easter anthem. It says, Christ, our Passover lamb, is sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep this feast, not with the unleavened bread of hypocrisy, but with the leavened bread of sincerity and truth. So the church reminds us that we must stop being hypocritical and cleanse our hearts. Cleanse our hearts. The whole process of the 40 days of the Lenten period, and I'm very sure that that's the same thing with the Ramadan, which is almost gone, is about self-examination, seeing the dark side, because we all have a good side and a dark side. Like I always say to people, you have Brother Balogun in church and Balu Baba in society. It happens everywhere.
So should there be a disparity? Should there be
becoming a person of integrity is the margin of these two. So in reconciling these two, and it's a conscious effort. So Easter and the church feast helps you to self-reflect and to examine yourself, like we do just before we come to the communion, and then ask God to forgive you, and then renew your intention to go out and live. And it's significant that when we end the communion service, we always say, go out in peace to live and to love and to serve the Lord. And we say, in the name of Christ, amen. So the church dismisses you at every communion, telling you to go again and start again and do it. But I'm not sure people really get the meaning.
And I imagine that, Christian leaders also get to a crossroads as well, in decision making, where their Christian faith clashes with tough decisions that they have to make that do not necessarily align with Christian values. What counts? I'm trying to find an example now, that could match up easily with what we're trying to talk about. But I imagine that you catch the drift.
Yes.
So what counsel will you be offering for Christian leaders whose decision making clashes with their Christian faith?
Well, in Ezekiel 34, God talks about giving us good shepherds. So, just like you've always had the cliche, many are called but few are chosen. And many who call themselves by different religious titles. And I don't think that should impress anybody. In fact, it has become so bad that if I travel now internationally, I just say I'm Dr. Agbelusi. Because I've almost been strip searched at several international airports once they say, oh, you're a priest. So it is really a dirty word. I mean, I've been in England before, I was in my collar, I was entered the shop, and someone said, you get out of here, you pedophile. I'm like, excuse me? So that's really where we are. So religious leaders really need to know that there's a need to start practicing what they preach, becoming good shepherds. The church exists to influence the world, to take care of the poor, not to become general overseer that people worship. So they must take that heart of humility and service, which is why on Monday, Thursday, one of the rituals is that the Pope or the pastor, whatever, washes the feet of the parishioners, telling you symbolically that even though you are called leader or you're called father, you're really called to serve. You know, your greatness lies in your service.
Very interesting point made there, but let's toss this to Abuja now. Nyota.
Thank you, Kayode. Venerable Agbelusi, thank you so much for coming in. I just have one question I'd like to ask you. You talked about the significance of Easter, and I mean, the Christians are celebrating Easter, the Jewish religion celebrating the feast of, I think, Passover and fast foods. The Muslims also have some kind of celebration all around the same period. The three major religions are having about the same celebration around the same period. But you, being a certified arbitrator and seeing that this is coming almost immediately after the general elections in Nigeria, what should we be thinking about reconciliation? How can we use this season to reconcile the different sides of the divide? I mean, bringing everybody together for the purpose of moving this nation forward. How can we do that as an arbitrator? What areas, what are the things we can bring into all of this?
Okay, thank you very much, Nyota. I'll use your words, because as an arbitrator, we always break down the disputes into issues. You say, how can we advise the people of Nigeria or the nation to apply Easter to their lives? Now, the first thing is, what is the definition of a nation? And if you Google that, you'll find that a nation is people who are bound by common ethnicity, language, history, culture, and society. So, does Nigeria have a common ethnicity? Does Nigeria have a common language? Does Nigeria have common culture? Do we have common society, and do we have a shared history? No. And this is why you find a lot of agitation. So one of the things we can do to resolve this dispute is to realize that we need to create tribe Nigeria. We can have a common ethnicity in terms of our national values, and being able to realize that we must define who the Nigerian is. You know, I've read the pledge over and over again. I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, to defend unity and uphold our honor and glory, so help me God. And the question is, when our youth read that, when our leaders read that, what's Nigeria in their mind? What picture do they visualize? So we need to realize that our ethnicity should become Nigerian ethnicity. Our society should be governed by norms and culture. Our culture should be honesty, hard work, reward for diligence, and respect for one another, human lives. Our language, of course, is English, but it should not just really be the spoken language, but the non-verbal language of love and empathy for each other. I mean, 600 people have been killed in Benue in 3 weeks. 6,000 have died on the road accidents. 88 kidnapped, and nobody really cares, you know. So these are Nigerians, these are citizens.
And I like the point you made about tribe Nigeria. That should be the big picture. Just in a minute, as we wind down or less, how are religious leaders handling this trend? It looks like religion is losing its significance. A lot of people grew up in church, for example, and right now they say, well, I don't want to have anything to do with religion, even other religions as well. So how are you handling this? Is this a trend that scares you?
Thank you very much. I mentioned the 5 things that define a nation. Religion is one of them. So religion won't define a nation. If anything, throughout history, it has destroyed nations. So in reality, religion is private. And so when our ground norm says Nigeria will be a secular state, it's right. The church has a place in the transcendent world, because our kingdom is not of this world, in bringing that to their members in their different locations, whether traditionalists, whether Muslim, whether Christians. But coming into society, becoming salt and light, then we now become people who work in the media. We use sports, we use teachers in the school educational system, we use music, we use these things to bind our country as a nation, with our religious values telling us, 1, love, sacrifice, and be hopeful. have a clear vision of a better self. Like in conflict resolution, we say all conflicts start from the intrapersonal conflict.
Venerable, I know we can go on, and I really hate to do this, but we are totally out of time. In fact, I had to squeeze that in, but thank you so much for the insight. Venerable Adeyemi Agbelusi is a clergy and accredited mediator and arbitrator. Thank you. By the way, if you want to catch that interview, you can always rewind or join it on our YouTube page, but it's been an amazing one. We have emails from you this Easter Monday. This email is from Kenneth, and it talks about the race for the National Assembly leadership, saying that ahead of the inauguration of a 10th NASS in June this year, on-the-ground leadership positions in the federal parliament commence shortly after the election. Those eyeing leadership positions and other principal officers have been far away with their moves, and we look forward to a more transparent and accountable system in this dispensation, he says.
Very quickly, Law Alpha Cross says, the National Assembly is a critical stakeholder in the delivery of dividend of democracy. So it's imperative that competency, mindset, track records, antecedents, etc. are considered in choosing their leaders to ensure a peaceful nation.
Professor Imonaka Enakena says, whether our politicians are dawdless, precocious, ignoble, or feigning ignorance, or nobly, the truth is they're all driven by the same ideology or objective. Hopefully, the 10th National Assembly must look within for members who are detribalized and must shun the togas of religion for members that have capacity and capability to lead, irrespective of political affiliation.
And Festus Akingbewa says, the group of legislators recently elected to a NASS is the most diverse ever, and it should be celebrated by all Nigerians. Although it would have been more exciting if more women and people living with disabilities had made it to the 10th NASS. The legislators in the incoming National Assembly must embrace this new sense of belonging and inclusion in electing their leaders. Nigerians expect a more dynamic 10th National Assembly. Nothing more, nothing less. And indeed, nothing more, nothing less. I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. My name is Neo Taigbe. Thank you for staying with us on the show this morning.
Somebody just remembered his days in primary and secondary school. Thank you so much for watching. Here's hoping you have a great holiday. I'm Maukwe Yusuf.
And as we look within, remember the words of Venerable Agbelusi this morning. He says, religion doesn't transform a nation. It is the privacy of faith. Thank you for watching this morning. I am Bukola Koka.
So help me God, right? Goodbye. I'm Kayode Kikele.